Have you ever felt that the path you've chosen to walk on doesn't feel like your own? Do you happen to question your career, relationships, or even feeling like you're fulfilling someone else's dream? Today's chat is one I've been looking forward to for some time now, and it's based on a mind-bending book I've read recently called In Every Belief is a Lie by Lisa Schermerhorn. Now, Lisa's book is a guideline to personal authenticity and getting out of the societal programming we're all exposed to throughout our lives, and introduces an inquisitive set of questions to ask yourself in order to reach your own place of truth, unwavered by other people's beliefs, behaviors, or even opinions. Lisa has over 20 years of experience as a transformational leader, an author of the best-selling book In Every Belief is a Lie, which we will be talking about today, but also a co-author of the bestseller Business, Life and the Universe, Volume 6, and also a co-author of the upcoming Business, Life and the Universe, Volume 10 with Dr. Joe Vitale. Lisa's book In Every Belief is a Lie was also endorsed by Dr. Christiane Northrup, three-time New York Times bestselling author. So guys, we're in for a treat. Lisa is an expert in the fields of human behavior, leadership, and personal development. She's an award-winning speaker and has spoken on multiple stages, including emceeing at the Harvard and Columbia universities. She has also spoken in Miami as a featured Blue Talks speaker. Now, she used to be a VP of business, which I found super interesting. A business development VP for an innovative startup company using virtual reality to help clients with pain reduction, memory loss, and stress reduction. She is a certified hypnotherapist and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. She helps entrepreneurs and high performance from where they are to where they want to be much, much faster than the conventional coaching methods. She is the co-founder of the Center for Next Level Performance, where she trains as a why coach, helping people discover their why and their purpose. But she doesn't only help individuals, she helps business owners discover their why for their business and also teaches them how to use it in their branding. Welcome to Habits of Influence, a podcast by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of entrepreneurship, and where we help you become the person others wish to follow.
Everything that happens is motivation.
Lisa, I am super excited to have you today. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and I'm excited to talk to you about all these different things.
Likewise. Look, when I was reading your book, which I loved, by the way, I couldn't help but notice how relevant it is in terms of building influence, becoming a strong leader, and standing firm in your beliefs when showing up for others. Now, I wanted to ask your opinion on the importance of doing this work and how essential it is, especially if your role involves impacting other people, to discover your own truth. And you call it in your book sovereignty, which I absolutely love. But I also want to know what potential pitfalls people building a personal brand may encounter if they are unable to pinpoint or stand in that truth.
Well, and this is no cut on used car salesman, but I like to use this metaphor. You ever see the people with the perfect teeth and the perfect hair, and they're very two-dimensional? You know, when you're not living in your purpose and you're not showing up fully as who you are, that's what you're presenting. Years ago, when I was studying with my mentor, he had me go through this exercise where I had all of these people in a room. There were about 25 people, and he handed me a grapefruit. And he said, I want you to hide this grapefruit. And I'm going to invite all these people in, and I don't want anyone to see that grapefruit behind, however you're going to hide it. When the exercise was over, he asked me how much of my energy went into hiding the grapefruit and how much went into actually listening to what people were saying to me. And I said, I couldn't hear a word people were saying. And that is what happens when you hide who you are. When you don't show up fully, and you're always worried about what other people think, and you're also, we have these gifts. We have these gifts that we're brought in. So when you bring that to your business, you bring that passion, you're relatable, right? When I first started, I had these so-called experts helping me with my branding, and they were telling me the right people who I should be marketing to. Well, I discovered later on that I was marketing to the wrong people, because my why was very different than the people they were telling me to communicate with. Because our why comes from the part of our brain that's emotional, right? We are passionate about these things in our life. So that why comes from the limbic part of our brain, where all of our emotion comes from, and that's where the purchasing comes from.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And obviously, there's a lot of misinformation in the industry of what should and should not be. And I completely agree that rather than sharing specific traits with our audience, with our customers, we should focus on the emotional connection or the values that bring us together. Because not only is this going to be have a stronger impact on the people that you're actually helping, but also it is going to be very impactful in terms of spreading the word, right? Spreading the message that you have. Because if people are connected deeply with what you have to say and with your transformational message, this is going to impact them in a much more profound way, which means that they're going to want to expand on it. They're going to want to talk about it with others, right?
Well, exactly. As entrepreneurs, there's a reason why you got into this business. There's something that happened in your life. There's something that's important to you that you want to get that message across. If you speak from your why and the emotional part of why you do what you do, it's compelling. If you just talk about how, for instance, if you just talk about, I sell computers and my computer does this, this, and this, people are like, okay, there's lots of computers out there. But when you start to talk about your why and what makes you different and unique and special, and you're tapping into the emotion of someone else, there's a much more compelling reason for someone to want to buy from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's something in your book that I actually found super interesting in terms of things that we take from our society, from our environment, from even our family, right? So those aspects of societal and even ancestral influences that we are being exposed to. And you are also talking about being authentic, right? Finding that truth that is your truth, that not necessarily is the widely known generalized truth. So what I would like to know, what is your opinion in terms of finding out if our truth, our pursuits of our truth are not flawed? Because obviously we cannot be objective, right? If we are searching for our own truth, it will always be subjective from our point of view. How do we know that this is going to be enough? Our truth is going to be enough, and it is not going to impact other people in a dangerous way. Because certain societal norms are there for a reason, right? We are growing in specific cultures. We are being influenced by different things that are presented to us as good or right or the right path. Where is that line in between of my truth, standing in my truth, being impactful in terms of being good for me, myself, and people that I speak to? And where is that line that we should not cross?
That's interesting. I've never had anyone ask me that question, and I love that question. Thank you. When we go into, so just to backtrack a little bit to explain, Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how when we are born, he believes that we are actually programmed from birth until 7 years old. I like to think that we have a little bit more leeway around that, but we have these 5 different brain frequencies that we move in and out of throughout our childhood. And we start out at theta, at delta, which is this really big wave. And think about what a newborn baby has to learn. Sounds, senses, taste, language. I mean, it's extraordinary what they have to learn. So those things are programmed at a very deep level. what money means, if there was scarcity in your childhood. These come in meta messages through certain languaging that your parents may have, or fears that we pick up on. So this programming comes in. So how do we know what is really ours and what belongs to other people? And we can inherit ancestral trauma and belief systems with the science called epigenetics. So I've worked with people going back up to 10 generations where there was trauma in an indigenous tribe, where there was so much that happened to them generationally about having their land stolen from them and being forced to not use their language and their customs. So how do you get back to your truth when you are programmed and you are told to be a certain way, and then all of a sudden, I always say, it's like finding your values. I discovered my values by finding out what they weren't. I moved to a town where I discovered that I didn't have the same values. It was all about sports and athleticism being the priority, where I was raised more academically. And I would go to these PTA meetings and school board meetings, and there would be 25 people there. But if you wanted to have an athletic field, and raise $1 million, the money was always there, but we didn't have enough books for the students. So, examples of, oh, wow, this is what I'm dealing with, and it doesn't feel right. It's kind of like trial and error describing, and the world creates mirrors for us, people and circumstances that mirror us, that show us where our issues come from our wounding, and we're very quick to point our fingers at other people, and how many fingers are pointing back at us? We have 3 fingers. When someone triggers me, I look at what is unresolved in me that I need to heal. Now, does that mean I don't ever get upset? Of course I get upset. I get triggered. But as I've gotten older and as I work more in that, I'm much more observant at what triggers me and said, okay, this is some unresolved stuff. I'm not saying that because, let's say, I think it's okay to steal because that's authentically me. I never encourage anyone to do anything that's dangerous, or can harm others. I think that's something we have to really be mindful of: ethics and morals, and doing the right thing and not harming others. But when it comes to ourselves, our whole life is about learning to love ourselves, learning and self-discovery. I still every day do things that scare me. I do things that in my life, I bring myself to that precipice of, how can I challenge myself to get to that next level? What is my how is my truth going to show up here? Because fear masks that.
Right.
And in the first chapter of my book, I talk about, I was in a 29-year marriage, and I was terrified to be alone. We both knew that things weren't working out, but I didn't have the courage to say I wanted out. I spent an entire week walking red hot coals, bending rebar and arrows, and walking on broken glass to finally have the courage to say, if I could do this, I could do anything. So I had to find my truth in this marriage wasn't working for me.
Yeah, great story.
Yeah.
I would never do that, by the way. I was just wondering, trying to imagine myself as I was going through the book, would I ever try that? I'd never actually struggled with lack of confidence or not being able to do something. So I'm not going to say that I have a complete lack of understanding of that, but I'm not quite sure, even if I was struggling with it, would I go and walk on coals and broken glass and do stuff like that? I think that there's something that would actually stop me. And I think it's not a case of me not being confident. It's a case of me just being very pragmatic and sometimes a little bit on the negative side, like what might happen. But you did mention that in your book as well.
Oh, I was a mess. Don't tell. That was not an enjoyable experience. I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown that week. But here's what for me is, when I talk about being a why coach, My why is challenge, and challenge people,
Mm,
challenge the status quo. So for
mm,
me, it's about, in order for me to move forward, I have to challenge myself in a big way.
hmm,
It's not something that's fun. Let me tell you, if I could do it very easily, as a matter of fact, I was reading a book this morning that said, it's unfortunate that our society uses pain to move through transformation instead of joy.
yeah.
And that was really profound, because when we go through these difficult times, we have to reach down deep as to what is here. What am I dealing with? Who am I going to become when I get to the other side? Joy doesn't bring us that for some reason as humans. When everything is sunshine and roses, there's no reason to push ourselves out of our comfort zone.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Actually, do you know what? You've mentioned triggers before, and I find it, I really want to ask about that, even though I did not have it in the script, I did not write it down, but I found it really, really interesting. Being a former productivity coach myself, previously, I used to work, and I have a strong belief that just as we have those triggers, right, the negative triggers about something that is probably an unresolved issue within us. The same as, like you just said, why don't we focus on the joy? The good traits that we see in people, and the things that we admire about people the most, are also the traits that we possess ourselves, funnily
Yes.
enough. But what I wanted to ask is about the process, the journey. As you start knowing yourself, as you start digging in and doing the work, you start being triggered by things that you did not pay attention to before, and you start being passionate about things that you didn't necessarily even see before. And I can see it in myself, trying to stand against certain things that really do trigger me, and I don't think actually that they are something that is unresolved within me. Is there a third kind of avenue, as opposed to the good things and the triggers, that the unresolved feelings? Is there a third way that once we start doing the work, we get passionate about things that we would not have been passionate before? And what do you think it's that's connected with?
Well, what's interesting is, I always say, how many times do we say, oh man, I worked on that and here it is coming up again? So everything comes in layers as we work on things, but we also have a purpose here. So when we spend all our time in the muck and mire working on ourselves and dealing with depression and dealing with beating ourselves up and not loving ourselves, all of our energy is going into that.
Mm,
So as we work on ourselves and remove that hamster wheel that we're on, and then suddenly we are free to live in our purpose, and whatever that purpose is. And that purpose may be related. I always tend to say that a lot of our purpose is related to a wound from our childhood that we resolve, because no one knows that greater than you. There's
mm,
something that happened in your life that caused you to really be impacted in a big way, and you did a deep dive, and now you want to share that with the world, right?
mm,
And so I think about that is more about, the faster we move through our own stuff, the more the opportunity to step into our own truth and allow ourselves to really be here to make a difference.
mm,
And some people come into this world with bigger things, like these boulders that they have to move in their life than others. And some people come in and really, I mean, I meet people who have had so much tragedy in their life. I'm like, how are they still here? And then I meet other people who have had these incredibly beautiful life with perfect parents and, support system throughout their life. We all have different purposes. So I always say, and you said it perfectly, you can't admire it in someone else unless you have it in yourself, right? So like, if I admire a podcaster like you who's done their research and actually read someone's book and has done their work to really want to get to know someone, and bring their message out, versus someone who's just going through the motions because they're not passionate about it. They're just
mm.
going through the motions to get, just, ticking off a box, right?
Right.
So we all do things in a different way that brings us into that, that thing that brings us that purpose. And when you know your why, it helps us get further into our purpose and know that we are in alignment with who we are.
Wow. Wow. I've actually, as you've been talking, I've had several epiphanies in my own journey, because that's what I've been wondering about. I'm very passionate about everything that I do. I believe that we we are not here to just show up and do things halfway or one quarter of a way, or just like I said, to tick off that box, right? It's about creating a change, a profound change, which leads me to my own clients. Oftentimes when people come to me and they have this powerful message, they have something that would disrupt other people's thoughts, right? They do discover that why, they do discover that reason why they are here. More often than not, they are very triggering to other people, because they come out with information that is not necessarily the general truth, or something that used to be perceived as normal. And you've got this great paragraph in your book that speaks of the societal anger of the people that do not feel that they themselves are able to go out and spread their own truth and their own message, and therefore they're actually angry at people that do. And I wanted to ask, what do you believe is the path that we as leaders should be going through in order to, first of all, understand the path, understand what we're doing here, but also how to deal with this anger, how to deal with the pushbacks that we usually encounter, and just stay on the path of leading other people at the same time?
So one of my favorite sayings is, what you think of me is none of my business. But words do hurt, right? So if I'm neutral about something that someone says to me, then I can just observe. If someone says something to me that has emotional impact, that tells me I have unresolved trauma around that, or unresolved beliefs around it. Right. So if someone starts to say to me, I don't believe in what you do, and you're making this up and it's not true, and where are your credentials? You're not a licensed mental health practitioner. And I'll be like, okay, then go to one. I know that when I had a breakdown, I went to conventional therapy 3 times a week and nothing was helping me. And these are techniques that help me. And I decided to become the person I was looking for 20 years ago.
Mm.
But I owned that. If I didn't own that, and if I were in a place where I were insecure about my skills, if I didn't completely believe in who I am, if someone said something to me and said I was a fraud, then I might believe it. And then I go down this rabbit hole, and then I'm angry, right? Another thing, so there's very simple tools that you can release these belief systems quickly. You don't have to carry these for long periods of time. There's the Sedona method, which is also known as the emotional release method, and you're releasing these, and you can see people transform and reframe how they see the world in a very short period of time, and sometimes one session. And it's extraordinary to witness. The other thing that I find is really powerful is forgiveness. And forgiveness is one of the single greatest things that you can do for yourself and others. And this was my own journey, where I had studied about a couple of years ago, where someone started talking about something called the Ho'oponopono, which is an ancient Hawaiian prayer. Dr. Joe Vitale talks about it in his book, Zero Limits, where this Dr. Hugh Lin was asked to be a therapist in a prison for the criminally insane. And they had so much attrition, they couldn't keep any of the people, the guards or therapists there. He said he would take the position on the count that he wouldn't see any clients. He just got their files, and he would pray over them. The prison system was so desperate to have a therapist that they finally agreed and hired him. Within a short period of time, the entire area, that criminally insane, the prison of criminally insane, emptied out. People either went to mental health facility, or they went back into the prison system. And what did he do? He prayed and forgave. He forgave the part of them. This is how we are all connected. I used that prayer. I used it for myself, because I made a list of all the things that were in my way. all the beliefs that I had about myself, and I released them. But that
Mm.
wasn't enough. I had to forgive myself for believing those things about myself and the people who were triggering me. And once I did that, the title of my book came. The book poured out of me in 5 months, and it was a bestseller 6 months after I started writing. It was extraordinary. And I always say miracles will happen, and I can't guarantee that will happen to everyone. But what I will say is, I started doing that prayer, and someone who I hadn't spoken to in 14 years, out of the blue, 3 months after doing that prayer daily, called
Mm.
me and said, I miss you. I want you back in my life. How can we make this happen?
Wow.
And the only thing that had changed was that prayer. So I invite people, if you're very linear thinking and this is really hard for you to wrap your brain around, I can't explain how this works. I always ask people to just trust and surrender to the process and give it a try.
Mm. And if anything, because I can contest actually, I've done Ho'oponopono myself, you're going to feel better. At the end of the
Yes,
day, you're going to feel better. And I think what is the most important thing for us to understand is, like you said, it's not about what people say to us. It's about the feelings that you associate with what they said, right?
right.
Um, it's your response rather than what they actually said. So we're always going to encounter people that are going to be unhappy. Not everybody's going to love us, and not everybody's meant to love us as
Right.
well. But yeah, I believe that those are some solid, very good tools. And forgiveness, I think, if nothing else, is going to make us feel better about ourselves and the situation. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
I wanted to come back to the skills. I actually am of the belief that we are all blessed with certain skills. We are stronger in certain aspects of our lives, and weaker in others. And I was really pleased to read inside of the book where you've been talking about different types of intelligence that we all possess. But I wanted to know, how much do you think of the success, and let's not define success because it's obviously different for everybody else, but conventional success that we might think of, how much of it you think are the skills itself, something that are natural gifts, something that we are born with, and how much of it is persistence, learning, and the hard work that we need to be doing along the way?
It's both. And I will tell you, as a child, I was painfully insecure, very shy. I really struggled. I had undiagnosed learning disabilities as a child, so I was giving my power away to everyone, thinking that everyone else was smarter than me, spent every summer in summer school. So I had to work through that. And when I did, what I realized, because I knew that desperate place of not knowing who I was at all and not believing that I had a voice, to becoming a professional speaker and writer. I wasn't born with that, or maybe it was, but I had to overcome so much to get there. And for those of you who want to be a professional speaker, I joined Toastmasters. And I literally would go to Toastmasters, which is an international speaking training program. It's amazing, and each one is different. So check out a bunch. They all have different personalities, but the one that I belonged to had a lot of professional speakers in it. And I remember when I went the first time, I had to do 5 to 7 minutes in front of everyone, just doing an introduction. I was terrified. I practiced over and over and over again in front of the mirror. And then suddenly someone gave me an opportunity to do a talk that was 45 minutes long. And I was like, shook in but the more I did it, it's the reps, it's it's like going to the gym and doing the reps and practicing. And it was a passion of mine, because I knew that there were other people who had been depressed and felt worthless like I had, and that I had the ability to help them. And the only way that I was going to do that was I had to get my message out.
Mm.
So I didn't have a choice in the matter if I wanted to help people.
That talk is actually the next thing that I wanted to touch upon, because a lot of times yes, we are doing the right things. We are honing in on those skills. We are doing the work. But the confidence doesn't come immediately, does it? And I found it really interesting when I read your story about your first public speaking assignment and how your perception of that situation was completely different to what had actually happened. And I think it would be very valuable for our listeners to know that story, because so many times we make ourselves believe that things are a certain way, and we let go. We don't pursue those talents, those skills, or even that purpose that we have just because of those perceptions in our head. Could you speak a little bit onto that?
So one of the first speaking opportunities that I was offered was in Boston at McLean Hospital, which is one of the top mental health hospitals in the country, or at least they're self-proclaimed that. And there's an organization called the Depression and Bipolar Association that meets on a regular basis. So they asked me to talk about our beliefs. So I went in there and I had a friend who was a stand-up comedian, professional. He was a morning DJ and he helped me with my talk and he gave me all these one-liners. So I knew it was peppered with a lot of humor. And I got on stage and I started to speak and all I heard were crickets. And the more I spoke and the more jokes that I had, the one-liners, the more I only heard my laugh inside my head.
Oh my God.
And as I went through this 45-minute talk, all I saw was, in my mind was, they hate me. I'm waiting for this hook to come and pull me off the stage. And that I started speeding up and I held my ground, but I was convinced that I was bombing. But I decided, instead of running off the stage, that I need to learn how to be a professional. I need to get through this. As soon as I stopped speaking, the whole room lit up with hands up. And they were asking questions. After 20 minutes, they had to stop. And so stop the questions. And I was really confused until the last person said, when you're really depressed and they have you on high doses of lithium, you can't feel the high highs and the low lows. And I realized, first thing you do when you ask about an audience is, who am I speaking to?
Exactly.
I thought that I was speaking to professionals. It ended up I was speaking to a room full of depressed and bipolar people who were heavily medicated.
But at the end of the day, they absolutely love your talk, and this is what we're looking for, isn't it? If we are providing a speech, whether it is on stage, online, a workshop, a training, that's what we want. We want people to be engaged. We want them to ask those questions. But you're right. We always need to know who we're speaking to, and not stay in our heads, because a lot of the times, and I can see it with my own work, the worst work that I thought that I did was actually the most responsive and engaging one that people absolutely loved. So we need to be mindful of that, not to stay in our heads, because a lot of the time something that we perceive as brilliant and fantastic and polished and wonderful is not going to be as impactful as that thing that we sometimes perceive as, oh my God, this is the worst work that I've ever done before, isn't it?
And people really appreciate how you handle yourself in adversity. Like, I have a funny story. I just bought a brand new microphone that could pick up everything. It's a Blue Yeti. And I had someone come to my house who was cleaning, and I said to her, please don't make a lot of noise. I'm about to get on a podcast with a woman in Australia, and I have this really powerful mic. So what happens in the middle of of the podcast, she flushes the toilet 3 times. Oh my God. And I have a power. So I live on the side of a mountain. So it's this power flush that it scares me when I flush it, because it's so loud. So 3 times. And I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. We laughed so hard about this, because she said, are you flushing? Is someone flushing the toilet? I said, oh my God. So it became one of her best podcasts, because we laughed about it. We made fun of it. And she named the podcast, around that. So and when you make light of it, you need to laugh. Laughing Here's
And I'm
everything.
laughing because I've had a similar story, but with my 8-year-old, and we have maybe not a very noisy toilet, but he has this tendency of actually putting the toilet seat down so hard that you can hear it in the whole house. And I remember running this 3-hour workshop. It was like I was waiting and preparing for so long. 3 hours is a long time to be delivering something. And so many times, at least 5 or 6 times, I had that smash of the toilet seat in between, which, it's that ability of you actually, composing yourself in that moment. Is like, okay, everybody obviously noticed because those microphones, they pick up on every single thing. That's true. But just like you said, laugh about it and just moving forward and just pretending that it didn't happen, or saying it out loud is even better, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. I was with a friend of mine. We were invited to speak. It was at an event that was supposed to finish at 7, and then there was a band in the other room. And we were running so late with this group of speakers, and my friend was the last to speak. And they started the band up, and she had started to speak, and we could barely hear her because the band in the other room was playing, and the band was really good. So she started dancing in front of the prompter, and she just handled herself with grace. You have to learn how to kind of think on your feet
Mm,
and bring humor in.
absolutely. Oh, it's a brilliant story. I would start singing actually. Last thing I wanted to touch on today, Lisa, not to keep you too long, because I know you're very busy, is people a lot of times they do want to change, right? They do want to discover that why, but they forget about one thing, that it takes time to change. And a lot of us, we have this tendency of like, oh my God, I want to change this out. It needs to be quick, right? It needs to be as quick as possible. And all of the tools and methods that you use are fantastic for that rapid transformation, for that change, for that at least awareness and understanding of where we stand and what might be changed in order to make it better. It's that all or nothing attitude that people have, thinking that I'm going to go in it, one day is going to pass and I'm going to wake up a completely different and changed person. What would you say to the need of actually taking your time in the process of that change?
I was going to say good luck with that quick transformation, although there
Oh, so
are
many
things.
people want that, so many.
You know what? We all do. But here's something that I invite people to think about. It took you a whole lifetime to get where you are,
Mm,
with programming and circumstances and belief systems and things that are unconscious. And so I always invite people, one of my favorite words is liminal. And what I mean by that is you're not who you used to be, and you're not who you're going to be yet. So you're in that liminal in-between state, trying to figure things out. And one of the techniques that I used was that Sedona method, and my mentor helped me for 2 hours. He helped me get rid of the need to worry, because I worried about everything. I was so neurotic. I would think about every possible thing that could possibly go wrong, and put all my energy in that instead of dealing with the task at hand.
mm,
And my mentor, Dr. Al, looked at me and he finally said, Lisa, you're a relatively intelligent person, don't you think? And I said, yes, I hope so. And he said, don't you think when something happens, you're going to be able to figure it out pretty quickly? And I said, yes. And all of a sudden, this huge thing happened where I was finally able to let go. But I walked around for 2 weeks not knowing what to think about. I was literally in a fog, because habits are also addictions. And one thing that people need to understand is that when we are depressed over a long period of time, we create these neural pathways in our brain that automatically go to depression, or automatically go to anger, or automatically. And we are so aware of addiction when we think about drugs and alcohol, but not a lot of people realize that certain emotions can be addictive too. And as in anything, it takes time to change an addiction. So when you're used to going in down that negative place, it's like we have to, oh, there I go again. What's my motive behind that? Now, how can I reframe it? What's the gift in this? What did I just get from this? And sometimes we don't see the gifts for a while, and sometimes we can look at it right away. But it's the forgiveness of the self, forgiving others, and going into that place of understanding that I'm doing the best I can with what I have
mm,
at this moment. And the book, The Four Agreements, If anyone has ever read that by Don Miguel Ruiz, he talks about, some of the things like, I'm doing the best I can at this moment. And it's about owning that. I wish I could think of the other three off the top of my head, but I don't have them here in my head. But it's a really profound book that if you were to open up the book at any paragraph, at any time, it always has this golden nugget of wisdom for you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I need to actually read it myself
I
after
read
this.
it. I read it every year. I go back and read it every year because always knowing that everyone's doing their best.
Hmm.
And your best Sunday morning when you're hungover is not going to be the best on Wednesday when you're, kicking it at work. Everyone's best is going to be different. And so it's about being okay with that.
Yeah, and there's gonna be those times where you just wake up and your brain is not necessarily going to work with you and it's going to tell you, when you try to make yourself feel better or make that change, more often than not, we have our own brains attacking us back. I'm always saying they're protecting us. I know they're not attacking us, but it's that kind of internal struggle that you need to go through because you will be reverting back to the habits that
Right.
you've had for such a long time, right? So it is a
Right.
process. It takes time, and eventually it will happen.
Right. Well, we develop these parts, and these parts come from, it may be 6 years old, where the 6-year-old wasn't getting enough attention or didn't feel nurtured and suddenly decided, oh, food is nourishing, food is love. And that 6-year-old is running our 40 or 50-year-old in making us eat when we're feeling lonely. And
Mm,
so we have to go back and talk to the 6-year-old and thank it because it did a good job when it did, but it's not working anymore. Can we give you a new job? What would be something that you would enjoy to do? So I do a lot of parts work where we're talking to those, and those parts have what we call arrested development. They think that they're still at that young age. They don't know what's happened in their life. So getting them up to speed, loving them, and giving them a new job is a great way to help that part.
beautiful, beautiful. And guys, the whole book is about that change. The whole book actually guides you through a lot of questions, invites you to look into yourself. And this is in all aspects of your life because it talks about your business, it talks about your life, it talks about your relationships, it talks about your relationship with yourself, it talks about the relationship with others. So a plethora of very, very interesting concepts that you can find there, as well as questions that you can ask yourself to actually find that why, find that truth, be in that sovereign state of your authenticity and essentially showing up better for the rest of the world. Lisa, I wholeheartedly recommend your book to anybody who wishes to read it. And guys, I'm going to link it down below under the episode, both on the podcast platform and YouTube. So search for it there. But also, where can people find you? How they can connect with you if they are interested in pursuing this topic further?
The name of my business is Center for Next Level Performance Coaching. The website is cnlpcoaching.com, and you can reach me there, or I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at Lisa Schermerhorn if you can spell my last name. So at any point, please reach out. I do free consultations. The why test is really cool. We can do that in one session if you want to discover your why, your how, and your what. And again, Lisa Schermerhorn, Schermerhorn, and I'm on Facebook as well.
And we will link down all the information, how to find Lisa as well under the episode. Lisa, it's been such a pleasure. I loved speaking to you. I could do it for ages, but I know for a fact that we both have just a limited set of time. But looking forward to staying in touch. Absolutely inspiring. And guys, I do recommend the book. Lisa's book is available on Amazon. If you are in most of the countries that have Amazon, you are able to get it. If not, you just go to her website and use and utilize all the other tools because it's really, really worth it. Very knowledgeable person. I know a little bit about self-development, and I can say that it's a very, very valuable resource in itself. Thank you again, Lisa, and thank you guys for tuning in. As usual, we will be with you next week. Remember to do the thing and give us some love, and leave your thoughts about the episode on YouTube. And of course, if you know somebody that could benefit from our chats, from our episodes, do send it to them so that we can actually help as many people as possible. Thank you so much for today, and I'm going to be seeing you guys next week. And Lisa, hopefully chat soon to you too.
Thank you so much.